Hi, everybody. Welcome to NBCU Academy. My name is Carl Quintanilla. I'm co-anchor of CNBC Squawk on the Street and Tech Check. Thanks so much for attending our NBCU Academy live stream on the art of the pitch. We are in a fast-paced news business, and journalists often get only a few sentences or even a few seconds to pitch a story. You got to find your voice, your skill in pitching. It's crucial in any newsroom to getting your stories published and on the air. So today, we're going to learn from some newsroom leaders about the fundamentals of pitching, what executives are looking for, how to make your pitch stand out from the rest. We're joined by Tom Mazzarelli, executive producer of Today, Tracey Eyers, executive editor of NBC News Race, Equality, and Justice Unit, and Maria Tabares, director of digital news content for Noticias Telemundo. These guys are experts in pitching, buying pitching, editing them, and finally publishing the work itself. And they're here for you. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the live chat right on the side there, and we're going to get to them later on this half hour. Guys, it's great to have all of you. Welcome.
Thanks for having us, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Great to be here.
Tom, let's talk first about the fundamentals of what a good pitch is. Give us two or three things that absolutely have to be in there.
I think the first thing for us, especially from a show that's on every day, is the peg, right? When do we need to put this on? Is it a tomorrow story? Is it something pegged to an event happening later on? So if you can frame it through that, that's incredibly helpful from our perspective. And then the secondary thing is always, and I think this is going to be the case across the board, is character. You've got to have some sort of character or characters involved in this that you can hang this story on. Otherwise, it's a print piece or it's something that doesn't necessarily translate to television. So from our perspective, what's the peg? When should it be on? And who are the people that you think can really supplement the story?
Tracey, how about you? Give us a few good bullet points to start.
Agree with Tom right off the bat. Character, who are we following? Who's telling this story is one of the most important parts, as well as time peg. But also, is this original? Is this exclusive? Have we seen this? Has the story been told before? Or are you pitching something that feels a little special to who you're pitching it to? I think that's pretty important.
And Maria?
Yeah, this is going to be easy because Tom and Tracey already talked about two of the things that I had in mind. So it's important to be original so that you haven't seen it or read of or read it somewhere else. So important that is original, definitely. And then it had the characters. They're really important because you need to conduct the story through characters. So you don't need to have the characters identified, but probably you have to have in mind who are the people who is going to tell the story. So that's really important. And finally, that is compelling to the audience. So especially for us at Noticias Telemundo, so we talk to a particular and a specific audience, but I think this applies to all the pitches that you do. So you have to have in mind which brand or show you're pitching to. That's really important. So the story is compelling to that audience. It's relatable to them. So that are like the three top things that I have in mind when I greenlight a pitch.
Right. Tom, I'm curious, as someone who's led a big show for a long time, what percentage of the time would you argue you are fielding pitches? And is it a pain? Do you relish it? I mean, when people come to you, should they be thinking, I don't want to bother Tom, he's so busy? Or should they be thinking, his show depends on ideas, I should give him as many as I've got?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's closer to the latter, probably. I mean, the news of the day stories, to some degree, almost pitch themselves, right? You know that you're going to do Ukraine. You know you're going to do COVID. The thing that we rely heavily on are those secondary stories that are pitched oftentimes, the bounce pieces, the stories that can run a little bit later in the show. Those are critical. Those pitches are critical because those are the things that a lot of times the producers or the correspondents are really attached to, and they can bring a different perspective to it. So, I would say we would much rather have more than less because it gives us more opportunity to tell different stories.
Right. In terms of mechanics, Tracey, written on paper, do you barge into the office and just start talking out loud? How much reporting in advance should you have done before you come in and start making these suggestions? And I guess a pitch is kind of a promise, right? It's a promise that you're going to deliver a certain amount of content and it's going to have to reflect what you said you'd deliver in the first place.
Definitely, you want to do a due diligence beforehand, whether it's a little bit of research, making some calls, making sure that you can deliver. Along the way, things could change. So you could, line up a voice and a location and then pitch it out, and it could change. And then it's on you to still try to deliver what you promised. But, sometimes it's an email, and I always say it's keep it short and sweet. First to get it bought, and then kind of develop it out and build out the story.
Right. But should it come, Maria, with promises like I have X, Y, and Z booked, we will have them in the piece? Or should it be like, we're going to look for a character like X, and we'll let you know who that is at a later date?
If you have the characters, it's better. Of course, that will be perfect. That will be like immediately you will say yes to that. But if you don't have the characters, at least you have to have the clarity that which kind of characters are you looking for this story. So if it's a mother or if it's someone in the community, or like you have to have identify the people that you want to talk to at least, so you can do that promise, and it's short and sweet as Tracey was mentioning, but also has like the details, the important details that you want the editor or the producer to read on that first paragraph or pitch or email that you're sending.
Yeah, and I guess, Tracey, a lot of this, in TV, you're going to be picture dependent, but how is it different, would you argue, the picture versus something that's written content? How do the pitches differ, and how should they differ, depending on the medium?
Well, obviously, if you're pitching broadcast, you have to think about the visuals as you're a big interview, and it's just a sit down and interview. If it's not, and you're going on location, you have to think about what are people going to see, what they're going to hear and what are they going to see, and so you have to think about that in a pitch. And I like to make sure when we're delivering our pitches, it's very clear. There's less questions that have to follow of what are we going to see. I'm telling everyone in the pitch, this is who we hope to speak with, and this is what you're going to see, and this is where we'll be. So it's very clear.
Tom, how are things approved at today? Is it a committee? Do you have a meeting once a week and you go through everything that's been collected? And what gets a pitch to the point where the reporter can barely get it out and you're like, I buy, do it?
We tried it. There's a pitch DL that people can send it to from across the news division, and we try to hit them as they come so that they don't pile up. But by the end of the week, the senior team looks at them and tries to get back as quickly as possible. I would say in terms of an immediate buy, if there's some visual that's amazing that you've never seen before or you think is perfect for your platform. Kerry Sanders is one of our great correspondents, and he's consistently pitching things where it's an amazing live shot along with the story itself. Those things tend to get an immediate yes.
That's interesting, which also kind of brings me to another thing I was wondering about, Maria. Let's say you're getting pitches from a veteran like Kerry, who's been with NBC for decades. It kind of comes with instant credibility. Kerry, he's going to deliver. He's got gravitas. He's a legend. Versus a newbie, right, who's in their first couple years working in a newsroom. How does the newbie sort of offset? You're still trying to prove yourself. How do you keep your pitches from being more easily dismissed?
Well, I think a good story is a good story. So independently where it's coming from, of course, it has. It's important that the person that is talking to you or pitching this to you has experience, and you probably have more credibility. But if you're new in this, you have a great opportunity bringing something original to the table, and you don't have to be afraid that you don't have that you're not a veteran pitching stories. So it's more important the story that you're pitching to. So if someone gets to me with a good or a great story, I will say yes, no matter who is pitching it to me, because then you can develop a team to work on it, to produce. So I would say, don't be afraid or don't be shy about not having a lot of experience in the field. Just make sure you have a great story to pitch, and you'll make it.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a calculus for a young reporter, Tracey, because let's say you have an idea, you've done a little bit of legwork on it, you kind of think you want to go to the boss and pitch it, versus maybe I should make a couple more calls. Like, how do you know when it's ready, right? When it's done baking and you're ready to present it?
Well, sometimes you have to trust your gut, which, does take a little bit of time, but think of that, is this exclusive? Is this timely? Is this original? If I don't, pitch this out now, will I lose the story? So those are things that may make you pitch it out a little bit without it being fully fleshed out, just because of the time peg.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's in effect you're kind of publishing in a sense, right, Tom? It's just your own news desk as a reporter, and you have to have a sense of when something is fully baked. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you go and it's turned down. How would you suggest young reporters handle sort of rejection at the pitch level?
Well, it's funny. On the first part, let me actually hit that, because there are times where we say yes in theory. Yes in theory to this, come back to us because you can then get X and Y or Z, and then it'll be a final green light. So that process is sort of, it can be extended. It's not an automatic yes or no. It can be, hey, are you theoretically into this story if we can get this person or this element or something? And oftentimes we'll say, yes, come back to us. So that does happen. In terms of the rejection, it's tough, but I think that it's part of the process, right? And that this is not a business built for people who tend to shy away from things when told no, right? There's just something built into it. So I think that for the most part, I think it's more important to deliver on what you promise, like you mentioned earlier, than it is to worry about continuing to get no. Worry more about the yeses and how you execute the yeses.
Right. Maria, would you say that your batting average matters, right? I mean, Hall of Fame baseball players, strike out 2 out of 3 times. Is that that's okay for a reporter too, I would imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tommy. Like, it's okay to have a no as an answer, because this is part of the process, and we intend to create a culture of pitching, so people are not afraid to pitch, even though they are not like on a strike of always getting a yes, because the story has to be strong for our own good, so we can produce it, so we can greenlight it to move forward and develop on. So I think it's about persistency and getting the right story, or getting the things that you're missing from the original pitch. I agree with Tom. It's not always a final, like a green light, like immediate yes. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's gradually, and you give the reporter the option to explore the story a little bit more, to develop, and then you finally get the yes. But it could take months or like weeks.
Right. Tracey, do you think it's best, if you're developing an idea, to talk about it with your coworkers, the reporter at the desk next to you? Because some of this is competitive, right? I mean, you want to retain ownership of the idea, especially if it gets bought.
I mean, I think if you have someone to bounce an idea off of to help your pitch, that's always great. Go to a colleague and say, let me talk this through, and bounce them. And they can help you find the best way to pitch it. So collaboration is key. I know this is a competitive market, but I think with your colleagues, it's, should be a safe space to just practice pitching on them and see what they think, and see where you can improve it, and maybe incorporate some of their suggestions.
Right. And finally, Tom, on budget, especially when we're talking crews, remotes, hey, I'd like to do a piece when Elon Musk sends a rocket to Mars. I mean, how much of that is a pitch killer?
I mean, I'd like to say it shouldn't factor, but it does. It's just a reality of the world we live in. I think if they're open and upfront in the pitch process about, hey, this might cost a certain amount, it's better that than on the back end when you come back and you get crew costs for $10,000. So I think it can be included. It will not be a killer if we really love the story, but the thing that would kill a certain one in the future if you come back to us is if you shoot your budget over by 25 or 30% on the previous story. we may not be as apt to say yes to it the next time.
Right. Guys, that's a pretty good start on understanding how you view all of this. We're going to move to a section now. We're calling it the pitch tank. And each of our panelists has brought a short pitch that they recently received. They're going to read the pitch, and then the other panelists will buy or edit the pitch as we're talking right now, sort of to help you understand how you can improve your own pitches at home. So first up is Tracey. Tracey, what did you bring?
Okay, I brought a pitch that was about infrastructure. You know, we're always talking about the Build Back Better plan. So this was the news peg around that. And it was titled Fixing Racial Divides. And it was about how racism played a role in the building of major highways around the country many years ago, and how marginalized communities are still feeling the effects of that and still paying the price of that. And the Biden administration had rolled out a plan to address this. And so that's the overall pitch. And the location that was identified was Tampa, which is one of the many places around the country where this has been an issue, and zero in on a neighborhood that is still feeling the effects of this highway that sliced through, in this case, a Black American community, and they're still feeling the impact. And the voices lined up were many, including U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a local official who can talk about like the history of Tampa, and the mayor-elect of St. Petersburg, which was the city's first Black mayor, who could share personal stories from his family history, who was displaced. And then also with any good story, the producer wanted to include some data from around the country that will show how these highways impacted these communities.
Okay, Maria, your first thoughts?
I think I'm missing a character there, like a community character, someone from the community that can tell how is this impacting their families, or how are they being affected by these roadways being built, like, and the disparities. So I think the pitch has the official voices that it needs to have, and the data and all the strong official part. But of course, because we were talking about the importance of the characters and people who can conduct the story, that's what I'm missing there. I don't know if probably that's the case, and that happened after this initial pitch, but that's my first thought.
Right. Tom, obviously this was already a huge issue, and Buttigieg had talked about sort of historic racial displacement, highways and stuff in press conferences in the days prior, I imagine. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my first things was, has he spoken about this publicly? Has he done another interview on this with someone else? Because the competitive factor is always another one. I do like the angle of taking what's a pretty giant topic in terms of just infrastructure and really narrowing down at what we call a slice at the Today Show. Like, what's the slice of it? And I do like that part of it. It's a very interesting, specific slice. And if Buttigieg had not spoken with other networks or someone else, I think it would definitely be a buy from the Today Show. Yep.
Tracey, you took it, right?
So we did end up taking it. It ended up airing in digital and on NBC News Now, and not in Tampa. It was completely changed, which shows the flexibility. Buttigieg was not included because the local voices, and it was out of Indianapolis, were so strong. And then there was a transportation secretary, a local person in Indianapolis, that talked about it too. And we had highway crumbling. It was the middle of construction. So in this case, the location was very compelling, and the characters around the location were compelling. So the story adjusted.
Oh, fascinating. Maria, what was your pitch?
Okay, so the pitch that I brought, should I go ahead? Yeah. So this one is about an investigative project that we are still working on. So let's see. Immigrants participate in paid clinical medicine trials as full-time jobs. While research shows that many Latinos are reluctant to take part in clinical trials designed to advance treatment of deadly diseases, some are not and support themselves by doing so. Some have been allowed to become professional patients traveling from city to city to take part in trials and wondering if their repeated exposure to experimental drugs might harm their health in the long term. Are all subjects giving informed consent or are entirely aware of the implications given language and cultural barriers? Should the industry allow subjects to participate in trials so often that the trials become their jobs? This investigation will rely on trips to clinics of interest, document analysis, in-depth interviews with bioethicists, medical experts, lawmakers, clinical personnel, migrant advocates, and to put a human face to the issue, subjects who have lived their last couple of months or years making a living of clinical trials and family members around them.
Wow, did this come with built-in characters already?
No.
I mean, what a story, Tom. Although you got to make, I guess you'd have to make sure that you had the faces, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's I read that earlier and I thought that's a story I've never really heard of before, which in this day and age is pretty impressive, right? You're so inundated with information and stories. So I love that part of it. It is very, to me, contingent upon the characters and how willing they are to open up about their lives and what they're facing as these clinical patients. So but in theory, that would be a yes, contingent upon tell me who the characters are and that they're willing to sort of really open up about it.
And Tracey, what's amazing to me about it is, I mean, assuming it's deliverable, it's an original angle that myself, Tom, too, I haven't heard this, but it fits in this overall discussion we've had for a couple of years now about clinical trials, right? As we've gone through the pandemic.
Right, and to touch on what you all said, feels original, feels exclusive, which is great, but it's very dependent on those voices. But you also can visualize what this story looks like. So it's built in a footage of we talked about that earlier of like what are people going to see and hear, and you could see it all if it came together.
Did it work out, Maria?
Yeah. What I wanted to explain is we didn't have in that first page like the names or the cities where we were going to fly to make the stories, but we like the reporter who pitched this did a great job, like a lot of research before pitching it. So of course we didn't have the characters, like we didn't know if they were going to be on camera, if they were okay to tell the story, to be like in a media outlet, like to amplify their stories. But of course of the record and before, and to do the research, the reporter has gone through a lot of extensive interviews with people who have experienced this to make this, of course, affirmations and come to us and say this is happening, because of course you have to do the legwork and you have to do the homework to come to with something this strong and to be a solid pitch. Of course, after this, it ended up like developing, and we found characters on the way. So this is like great because we started with like a couple of them. Probably this is a story that it's doing for broadcast and digital. So it's really important for us to have the characters on camera, that they are willing to speak to us. So it's a working process, but yeah, it ended up working really well.
Oh, that's fascinating. Tom, how about you?
Well, it's funny because this pitch came from an original pitch which he passed on, and then the correspondent came back and said, well, I'm also working on this. So kudos for the sticking with it. And he said, FYI, I'm working on another Ukraine story, talking to a mother momentarily, but here's the bottom line. Chicago couples newborn preemies born via surrogate in Ukraine are stuck in a Kiev hospital basement because they need medical supplies to travel. And then he sort of puts it, I like to put it in context of the viewer. Just imagine you're a continent away from your newborns who are in an active war zone. More to come on this soon if you think it could work for you. And I think that we bought it immediately. And part of the issue too, and it's not on here, is there was a picture. There was a picture of these preemies in a NICU unit in Ukraine. And it was just, you saw the visual and you could just connect to it. And the correspondent, who, by the way, is also relatively new, this is one of the first pitches we've gotten from him. We said yes. We said, if the parents will talk, we'll happily take it. He ended up getting the parents who were in the States on Zoom, and we turned the piece around for the next day.
Wow. Oh, the next day?
Next day. But that's how, I mean, that's that's the pace of our show, because that's sort of what's going on. And that differs depending on platform.
Right. Tracey, what do you think?
Well, it definitely has that timing angle. And it brings up a good point. As many times I like to include a picture in the pitch, because that can just, really just drive the point home. And so I'm with Tom. I would have seen the picture, saw the story. It's also in something in the news cycle. So it would have been an immediate yes.
And Maria, I mean, my first impression is that whoever this new reporter is definitely knows the Today Show, right? You really knew the audience.
Right. Yeah. I would love to see how it develops, because it's really emotional. It's really like compelling to the audience. Like we were just talking at the beginning of this. It's really important that you have like a character, that you have like their character, and you want to see how it develops. Like it gets you. Sometimes there are pitches that gets you from the first moment, because it's like, oh, I want to see how this develops. So I want to be the first media outlet to report this and follow up through the developing of the story. So probably this is the case.
That was a great exercise, guys. Appreciate you bringing those. We got a couple minutes left. We do have some Q&A. One's from Katie O'Brien. Thanks for the time today. What happens, Tom, if you pitch to multiple shows and platforms and then they all buy it? Eek! Do you need to then make them different for each?
You mean the steel cage match that becomes wrestling over stories? Yeah. You know what? We're pretty good in terms of, with the shows. It's funny because nightly, we've always had a competitive sort of back and forth with nightly news, just because of the immediacy of our shows. What we try to do is figure out, like I said in the very beginning, when is the peg? Oftentimes the peg will dictate it, right? It's the day of, so it happens at noon, so nightly does it first, or even NBC News Now will do it because it was happening during the day. So a lot of times we'll kind of defer to when the peg is, and then there are other times where sometimes if we buy it and we know we're gonna have to go second or third, we'll end up just saying, you know what, we'll let them have it. And it's just a conversation. But I'd rather be in the position of liking stories and having to navigate through that than not liking the story.
All right. Maria, Javier has this one. I have a positive, inspiring news story, deserves media attention, but the story pitch keeps getting rejected by local media. What do you suggest I do? By the way, he adds, I'm a first minority student from Harlem to win 11 scholarships. How do I pitch this to media outlets? What do you do if you're not a full-timer? I mean, you're pitching on more of a freelance basis.
Well, you have to build your network, and of course start getting the sense of each media that you're pitching to. So there is really important to know the audience again, because it's not the same if you're pitching to NBC national network, or if you're pitching to a local station where you need to find like local characters or things that are relatable to that specific community or audience. So it depends. You have to tailor the pitches depending on who are you pitching to, and if you're getting rejected, that doesn't mean that pitch is not going to see the light like in some day, but probably you need to do more legwork to refine it. You need to add more details, or you need to twitch it or find a different angle, so you probably see a yes, so you don't stick to that and it keeps getting rejected. Because if it's getting a no after a no, it's because, of course, it's missing.
Right. Finally, I think as we wrap up here, one more, Tracey. What happens if you find a character and then they back out at the last minute? We've gotten a couple ones that kind of have this theme.
Well, you try to find another one. That's just the simple. It happens. It happens a lot. Usually, when we're going into a pitch, we try to find more than one to just account for that possibility that somebody may back out. So just go in with multiple options.
Right. Guys, this was really good. I don't know. What do you think? I wish they'd had something like this when I was in college or new in the industry. You guys really brought a lot of concrete professional tips and insight. That does wrap up our discussion today, The Art of the Pitch at NBCU Academy. We want to thank you for being here. And of course, our thanks to Tracey, our thanks to Maria, and our thanks to Tom. If you want to learn more about how we cover the news, check out NBCUacademy.com. sign up for our upcoming Next Level Summit. It's our online conference April 5. You're going to hear from executives, anchors, reporters, producers from NBC News, MSNBC, CNBC, and Telemundo about the journalism landscape and how to position yourself for success. You don't want to miss that big global virtual experience with NBCU Academy. Thanks again. We'll see y'all soon. Have a good week.